everyone. My name is Tiffany Jull. I'm one of the psychology staff here at the WRDSB, and I'm going to hand it over to Dave.
Hi there. My name's Dave Clausen, also a psychologist with the school board. And one of the things that we usually like to introduce here, and I'll do it for Tiffany because she missed it, is that we're parents. So my kids are in their 20s, so I have made it through the teenage years. Tiffany's are in the teenage years, so she said she will be listening very closely to us. I'll hand it over to Laura.
Hi, everybody. My name is Laura Bickle. I'm also psychology staff with the Waterloo Region District School Board, also a parent, as Dave said. I too have come out the other side of the teenage years with my daughters. They are now 20 and 21. And you're going to see that throughout this presentation, we're actually interweaving what I'd say professional expertise in with parenting. I don't know if I want to say expertise, like just kind of getting in there and mucking around and trying to figure things out as we go, just like the rest of you. So we'll give lots of examples from our own kind of experiences with our kids as we go through this with you guys today. So we're going to start with the first concept that we want to talk about is something called attunement. So attunement is just a fancy term for finding those opportunities to connect with your teenagers. Any of you that are joining us today that have teenagers or preteens know that this is one of the hardest parts, is finding ways to connect with your preteen or your teen. If your kids are still little and you're joining us and they still really like you a lot and want to hang out with you, then this is sort of a preview for what awaits you. So attunement is really about trying to find those times really more so on your child's terms than on yours to connect with them. So I'm going to just paint a picture for you. Again, any of you that have teens or preteens are going to know exactly what I'm talking about. You know, your kid is in their bedroom, the door is closed. You want to ask them how their day went at school. So you gingerly knock on the door. You hear like a grunt on the other side that you think might mean, okay, open up the door. You open the door, you briefly surveil the mess in the room, take note of all the dishes. And then you smile and look at your child and how was your day? What's going on at school? And you may be met with grunts again, maybe with monosyllabic responses, but probably fairly rarely with, a real sort of engagement about, oh, school was so great today. We did this, that, and the other. So this is an example of you kind of going into their space to try to connect with them. Sometimes it'll work. Probably most of the time it doesn't. And you might try the next time, okay, maybe me standing at the door was a little weird. So this time when they let me in, I'm going to go sit on the bed with them and try to be super cool and chat. And that probably isn't going to work out so well either. I think when I tried that once with one of my daughters, she was like, can I help you with something? Or something to that effect. So, so it was actually during COVID when we were doing these presentations, when we started these lunch and learns, that attunement really kind of came to the forefront for me because I had teenagers at the time. And as was the case with everyone, I spent a lot of time doing this. I spent a lot of time in Zoom meetings. I spent a lot of time, doing work on the computer and so forth. And, there were times when one of my daughters would emerge from their lair of a bedroom and wander downstairs, usually to get food. By the way, this is a great time to connect with kids. And they would say something to me and I'd be like, okay, just a minute, I'll be right with you. I'm just doing something. And then by the time that I would kind of get to them, they'd already be gone. So I really started to pay attention to those times when, they did sort of want to engage, even if it was just like, hey, mom, like, where's the other thing of mayonnaise or whatever, like just them kind of throwing that bone to us, right? And trying to find those opportunities and not let them pass you by, basically. So that's the concept of attunement. Tiffany?
Hello. All right. So I also have struggled with this piece around finding your moments, mainly because I've experienced a lot of inconsistency. So 1 minute, my daughter, who's 16, is sitting with headphones on, watching whatever she's watching. And then the next minute, she's curled up on the couch, acting like she's a toddler. Now that's a little extreme, but you know what I mean? Those moments where you don't know how to, I don't know how to enter this because it's so inconsistent. And I think that's another attunement piece, is moving through the teenage years is really hard. And for any of us who can remember that, the dawn of time, I think it was, but not holding against them the fact that one minute they want to be treated like an adult and the next minute they want to be cared for. Right. And so that's the thing. And I think because I have two kids, I've been having to watch that and try to find those moments where each of them are receptive, right? And then joining them where they are, and knowing that it is not a clean line to grown uphood. That's not a technical word, but that's the one I'm using. So I think
Okay,
we're going to get
actually,
into,
I
go
want to
ahead.
throw in another cent or two on attunement as well, because we can be attuned to multiple different things. We can be attuned to thoughts, feelings, or behaviors. And often when we think about attunement, we're thinking about feelings. It's like, what's going on? What's your experience right now? All of that sort of thing. Some kids don't want to tell us much about how they feel. But they might tell us a whole bunch about what they're thinking or what they're doing. And so attunement can happen in several different ways, and different people are comfortable with different things. So some parents are quite frankly not that comfortable with feelings, and it's like, I don't want to talk to you about your feelings. That doesn't interest me. I'm no good at that stuff. But I'll talk to you about what you're doing, and that can be okay. It's useful to be able to do all three of these. So one of the things that's really good to know is, what do you typically attune to, and what do you typically not attune to? Because you may have to do a little bit of work on the things that you don't attune to. Um, and also, what's your child comfortable with and what's your child not comfortable with. So just a couple of things to make something that's really pretty complicated already even more complicated. All right. Okay. After attunement, we can talk a little bit about sort of relational patterns. And there two of these I see more often. One of them I see less often. They're very predictable ways that human beings interact with each other. And this is not limited to adults and adolescents, not at all. So the first one's pursue distance. I need something from you. I need you to bring your plates from your room and put them in the dishwasher. Have you done that yet? Have you done that yet? Have you done that yet? As your child continues to run away from you regularly. This is a pursue distance sort of pattern that you're getting into. And one of the things that's really important about this is that it feels like you don't have an option. Either I have to go after you or I have to get away from you. And breaking this is not an easy thing to do, because either the pursuer needs to stop pursuing or the distancer needs to actually approach the pursuer. Okay, so these kinds of things are relatively complicated, but it's good to recognize this pattern and say, hey, wait a minute, I know what's going on here. I'm chasing after you and you're running away. And this is happening over and over and over again. Recognize the pattern, then you can talk about the pattern, try to figure it out. Okay, so that's one. That one's super common. Another one that's really, really common is attack, defend. Our natural response as human beings to feel like, when we feel like somebody is attacking us, is to be defensive ourselves. When you start a sentence with something like "you never" or "you always," the person that you're talking to will feel attacked, and that goes both ways. If your adolescent's saying that to you, then you're probably going to be defensive. You're probably going to defend because you feel like you're being attacked. Again, it's useful to be able to notice when this kind of pattern is going on with you and your child, and which way it goes. And sometimes we flip, right? So maybe Tiffany's got something that I need. Tiffany's got a test that I need, and I keep asking her and asking her and asking her, Tiffany, do you have it? Do you have it? Do you have it? But then it might flip. It might be the case that at some point Tiffany wants something from me, and then she's the pursuer and I'm the distancer. Same thing happens with attack and defend. We can take turns at this. Again, recognizing the pattern, super useful. So those would be the two most common ones. And the last one that's frequent enough that it seems to be worth mentioning is demand, appease. And this one is child or parent makes a demand, and the other party thinks that, okay, I need to give in to this in order to keep things happy. And one of the ways that I've seen this come out is in counseling, actually. So it's frequently the case that a parent brings an adolescent into counseling. The adolescent has no intention of being there, does not want to be there at all, not even a little bit. Why are they going? And this is usually one of the first questions I ask when I talk to them. Why are they going? It's to keep mom off my back. It's pretty straightforward. Okay, so there's a demand to do something. There's an action to make the demand go away. There's no real intent to follow through on the thing that's being asked about. So in the counseling, it's like, I don't really intend to do anything in here. I just plan to come in here to get mom off my back to say I'm doing something. Okay, and so that's another one that people frequently fall into. I don't know, Tiffany, Laura, anything to add to that? No. Okay, so that's relational patterns.
Actually, I did have something to add to that, but I couldn't find my unmute button because my computer's not touch screen anymore. So I'm still trying to get used to that. So it took me a minute. Just one thing I just wanted to add to that, and I think you touched on it, Dave, is the idea of actually calling out and discussing what the pattern is with your child. So saying, I've noticed when I ask you to do this, you pull away. Like, what can we do about that? How can we kind of negotiate this differently? So, and we do this a lot actually in the work that we do, is be really transparent about, I'm noticing this. Like, what do you think of this when this happens? Really engage your child in that conversation about those relational patterns and see what they have to say, right? And is this next one me? Am I going right into this, guys? Yeah. Or is it Tiff, you?
I think we were sharing this one. So why don't I start then? Why
Yeah.
not? Okay, so we all have goals for our kids, right? As they're moving through their life. And we wanted to highlight a few different concepts in this regard, because you will have ideas as the parent. The other parent may have very different ideas. And I did see a question about sharing time. And so we'll address that at the end, about thinking about how do you co-parent too, right? And have your child at different times. And so one of the things that stood out for me kind of in the work that I do, I work with a lot of kids who have special needs, and thinking about not setting age-based goals in terms of what you expect a child to be able to handle. Thinking about this attunement fits in actually with the behavior piece, noticing where are things right now, okay? How independent are they with bringing the dishes out of the room, right? Getting ready in the morning, preparing, making sure they've done their homework. Like, what are the things that you want them to be able to do, but take a moment and see where are they right now on their own, and then incrementally set goals for how you're going to support them. So naming it, love that, Laura, good segue. I notice that you're constantly, or it appears that you're catching up on homework that maybe you had other time to work on. How can I help you with that? Do you notice a pattern on what's happening there? How can we do this differently? And then work with them on that. I think that the gradual increase in independence with support getting them there, right? Give them the support and then gradually back off, okay? I think the priorities and the privacy are Laura, and I think that they both tie in very well here.
So this has been an evolving concept for us, actually, as we've done these seminars over the last few years. And what Tiffany just talked about, independence, bringing your dishes from your room, doing your homework, cleaning your room, all these things. One of my daughters was hearing this at one point, and she said, "So you're talking a lot about the things you want us to do when you talk about independence." And she said, "I feel like you're missing something." She's like, "What about the independence that we want? What about the other side of that coin? You want us to have increased responsibilities, cleaning our room, et cetera, et cetera. What we want in terms of independence is freedom of choice and decision-making and privacy." So I thought that was really interesting, because I was really only looking at it from that parenting lens of independence means you do what you need to do to get things done. But independence from their perspective is really more about that flip side of decision-making, freedom, and privacy. And so what I think is really interesting about that is treating those as sort of parallel processes. And again, almost naming those parallel processes and saying, okay, here's what I want as a parent. I want you to do X, Y, and Z. Here's what I know you want as the kiddo. You want to be able to do X, Y, and Z. So, maybe if you can show me that you can do some of these things, I can give you some of what you want. Or conversely, maybe I have to trust you to make some of these decisions, right? Within the absence of showing me these responsibilities. And I think it goes better the first way. So it was just sort of an interesting perspective. I think that we have different lenses on what independence means.
If I can name one experience in our house that has actually worked out really well, especially for someone who needs a lot of sleep, is bedtime. So I don't know if anyone has ever had that argument with their kids that it's time to go to bed, when for me in my house, it's because I need to go to bed and I'll go to bed better if I know you're in bed. And my kids saying that they're still not tired and they don't need to go to bed so early. And so we had that conversation of, here's how I'm going to know that you've gone to bed at a decent time. You're getting up on your own in the morning. There is no mood stuff going on where you're a bear in the morning, right? And there's no nagging and you're getting stuff done. And so it actually has made our evenings a lot better. And I do go to bed first, just going to call it. But they're going to bed, they're taking care of themselves, they're paying attention to their body, how much sleep they need, and they're able to do that responsibility piece that is important to me in the morning. So it has worked in that one regard. Not everything works that well, but that one has.
Yeah.
Anything you want to add, Dave?
Yeah, I'm going to throw in 2 cents there, because you need to know your family, okay? Because it's really interesting. One of the criteria is nobody's going to be a bear in the morning. Everybody is a bear in the morning in our house, no matter how much they've slept. So that can't be one of the criteria, right? Like in our house. So you need to tailor it to your own home. So know your kids, know what they're capable of, I guess, is what I would add.
And I just think too, another thing with independence, and then we'll move on to the next one too. Another thing with independence is recognizing your own barriers as a parent to allowing your child freedom and independence. And to me, a great example of this was driving, right? That, for any of those of you that are teaching your kid how to drive, that that's a terrifying experience. And it greatly increases independence when a kid can drive, especially like I live out in the country a little bit. So, driving means independence. But it also means a heck of a lot of worry on our parts as parents now about our kids, and kind of they're out there in the world and they're driving and all the things that are associated with that. So I think you also have to recognize what your own barriers might be to allowing your child to kind of get out there in the world. It's not easy. And then next slide is, okay, so this is defiance and problem behavior. This is a big thing for a lot of teens, right? This, kind of their attitude, everything you say black, they say white, that kind of thing. So, I mean, defiance is one thing, but then there's problematic behavior, right? There's kids that are getting into trouble. They're trying new things, whatever it is, vaping, smoking, sometimes drugs, other things. Getting into trouble, graffiti, these kinds of things that as parents can be very, very worrisome, obviously. But what the research shows very consistently is that there is to some extent a normalcy to problematic behavior in adolescence. And that for most kids, even most kids that engage in things like graffiti or a little bit of vandalism or whatever, it's what's called adolescent limited, meaning that behavior will, for the vast majority of kids, taper off. A relatively smaller percentage of our youth will go on to be life course persistent in terms of that problematic behavior. How do you predict which is which? I really don't know how we would do that, besides to, know that most kids will come out the other side, and most kids that have various protective factors in place will come out the other side. I think the big thing is, talking to your kiddo about the fact that they're going to make mistakes and they're going to do dumb stuff. And that's just kind of the way it is. And, there's dumb stuff that's going to be kind of dumb stuff in the moment and not really, be a big deal in the future. And then there's dumb stuff that's going to have significant implications in terms of their life. And so I think opening up those conversations, and that's not an easy thing to do. But just recognizing that, for most kids, their research shows very clearly that it will be adolescent limited as opposed to that more life course persistent pattern. Dave, Tiffany, was there anything we needed to add to that?
The thing I would add in is that since you don't know life force persistent or adolescent limited, I think you approach them with the understanding this is probably going away. But I'm still talking to you about it. And we may still have a few very uncomfortable conversations that you don't like even a little bit, as I sort of poke at this dumb thing that you've done. So make sure that we don't back off the difficult behavior. I get that's the one thing I would say. Yeah, and I think Laura, I see you nodding, so I'm assuming you're agreeing with that.
Yeah, and I think that's a very good point, Dave, that just because we're saying that a lot of it's adolescent limited does not mean it's a free pass and they don't get to have consequences for those behaviors and they don't have to have the uncomfortable conversations about them. We still absolutely need to address those behaviors, but I think to sort of just have that kind of in the back of your mind that, it doesn't necessarily mean that this is going to be what happens for the rest of their lives.
So what you're making me think about is how you talk to your kids about it. So you almost have that in the back of your head, like, you know what? I know you're seeing kids do things, they're trying out new things, they're trying to figure out where they fit, they're rebelling a bit. I want you to think about how this will impact you if you were to continue doing this in a job, or if you were doing this out in the community, right? So start giving them that perspective that it does look different as an adolescent. It's not okay now, but can you imagine how not okay it would be if you were 25? Do you know what I mean? Like to kind of give them that consequence, that perspective, which is not a thing adolescents really do a lot of.
Mm.
Just gonna throw that out there.